Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. As Caldwell First Nation celebrates the return to its ancestral lands, we introduce you to some of the people who live on the property. Plus, Premier Doug Ford is shifting direction on wind power in the province, reopening doors to green energy. And a 95-year-old Windsor woman has checked a big item off her bucket list with thanks to a big surprise from her family. An Ontario First Nation is celebrating a historic moment. After fighting for more than 230 years to reclaim its land, the people of Caldwell First Nation are finally returning home. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa has met some of the first residents.
Can you feed your baby?
This is Jarrell Vaughn's new home. She and her twin girls are among the first to move back onto Caldwell First Nation's traditional lands. Vaughn sees it as a way to finally reconnect with her culture.
I've missed out on a lot of things, like learning our language. I've missed out on learning traditions, learning how to be involved in our community.
Though she didn't have the chance, her daughters will. For the First Nation, known as Zaaga Iga Nini Wog, Anishinaabe for people of the lakes, this is an enormous step forward. It's been fighting for this moment for more than 230 years. Colonization starting in the 1790s stripped Caldwell of its territory, which stretched from the mouth of the Detroit River to Long Point along the north shore of Lake Erie. The First Nations spent decades negotiating with the federal government. After settling a land claim in 2011, Caldwell bought an empty plot in southwestern Ontario. In 2020, it got reserve status and started building 28 homes.
It just feels good to have some place.
James Welch is Vaughn's neighbor. He's one of 60 people who will be living on the reserve by mid-September.
I love it here. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's everything I wanted.
And this is it. This is what we've built.
Chief Mary Duckworth says the community wants to add more homes and a school.
I see, just real community values being demonstrated by working together, sharing with each other, taking care of each other.
With hopes that that can continue into the next generation.
They are 2 years old and they get to come into this world learning all of these traditions that I'm just learning now.
Learning that's taking place at the corner of Mishkiki Mikan and Jiwagaza, Anishinaabe for Medicine Trail, and being brought back home. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Caldwell First Nation.
Today marks the 82nd anniversary of Operation Jubilee, better known as the Dieppe Raid, which was the bloodiest day for Canadian soldiers in the entirety of the Second World War. The annual ceremony was held at Dieppe Gardens on Windsor's waterfront, where a monument stands to honor soldiers from the Essex-Kent Scottish Regiment who lost their lives in France.
This event is deeply rooted within our community because of the fact that so many of the men that went were from this area. They were here, and they were shopkeepers, they were teachers, they were locals who went over to a foreign country for freedom. And it's important that we remember that, because we wouldn't have the freedoms and luxuries that we do today without them and that sacrifice.
The Ford government is reversing its previous opposition to green energy in Ontario. The province is opening the door to proposals for new wind and solar power projects starting later this year. One big question is whether municipalities will allow them to be built. Our senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley, has the story.
Welcome to Melanchthon Township, home to about 3,200 people and more than 160 wind turbines.
We're not unhappy with the way wind turbines have rolled out in Melanchthon, but that's not to say there hasn't been problems along the way.
This wind farm, about 100 kilometers northwest of Toronto, was the first to be built in Ontario back in 2006. The Liberal government of Dalton McGuinty soon made renewable power one of its top priorities, even approving wind farms in communities that didn't want them. Then Doug Ford became Premier with a promise to scrap green energy projects.
We canceled those terrible wind turbines that is really for the last 15 years have destroyed our energy file.
Now, in what stands to be one of the sharpest policy U-turns the Ford government has made, Ontario is poised for its biggest expansion of green energy in years. In total, the province has plans to add another 5,000 megawatts of renewable power to the grid over the course of the next decade. That is 2.5 times what's to come from refurbishing the Pickering nuclear plant. Although some of that new production will come from solar energy, industry insiders expect wind farms will account for the lion's share.
The fact that the government has now had this about face on wind power and solar power speaks to how amazing this technology is, how fast it's growing in other parts of the world, how much the costs have come down.
Another key thing that's changed since the Liberals were in office, Ford's government will only approve projects that have the thumbs up from local council.
157 communities have declared themselves to be unwilling hosts, and those are communities that either have turbines already or are adjacent to jurisdictions. So they're quite aware of the problems that came with it.
Mayor Darren White says any companies that want to build more wind power in Melancthon will need to do their homework.
We're not going to pass a resolution just on a back of a napkin drawing. We want to see your plan. We want to see the locations. We want to see what the infrastructure is. We want to see what the benefits to the community are going to be.
The province is due to start soliciting proposals for new green energy projects later this year. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Melancthon Township.
A particular athlete who competed at the Paris Olympics is still going viral. Australian breaking competitor Ray Gunn. She's been a target for online mockery across the world after her performance was wildly criticized for being, well, less than good. But a member of Windsor's dance community has a bit of a different take.
As soon as it happened, we were all on the phone, all the staff were all laughing and joking around. We definitely thought it was a different approach, but again, we kind of appreciated where she was coming from. And I think that we're all talking so much about her performance, and everyone has their own opinion about it, but I think it's great that everyone's talking about her because clearly she did something right if we're all discussing it instead of the gold medalist. But I do think that she gave everything she had, and as a dancer, I can appreciate that. You know, it takes a lot of courage to go out there and do what she did on a stage of that size and in front of the entire world. So my heart goes out to her. I love posting stuff online, and you know what? I think that's everybody's fear. You know, you put something out there and there's always going to be conversation, there's always going to be feedback. And I think that's kind of like a negative aspect of social media that we're seeing more and more. There's definitely always that risk, but I always stand behind the dancers and staff here and anyone that comes through our doors.
The Windsor International Black Film Festival wrapped up yesterday with filmmakers from around the world submitting their movies to the first Black Film Festival in the city's history. Among the winners last night was Zaid Milkyas, who at just 20 years old won Best Documentary. He was in our radio studio earlier today.
It felt amazing. This was my first international independent documentary. And so to see it get so far is truly just like a marvel to me. I never thought, you know, it was a shot in the dark, and it was fruitful. It's called Empower Ed. The motto is kind of illuminating paths out of poverty through education. The documentary is a deep dive into what it takes to run a school in Ghana, Africa, and we kind of learn about the ups and downs, the challenges and the triumphs, and we are introduced to a couple of incredible characters who make it all possible, and we also learn about what's in the future for this school.
95-year-old Windsorite Evelyn Higgins has checked a big item off her bucket list. More than 70 years ago, she got the chance to ride in a 1939 Ford Roadster with a rumble seat, and she never forgot that ride. Well, this weekend's Woodward Dream Cruise presented a unique opportunity, and her family was able to arrange for a pretty big surprise.
They said they were taking me to lunch at Harbor House. Said I have to stop at a friend's house first, and then when we got to the backyard, all of a sudden I saw this car pulling out of the garage, and I nearly had a fit. I thought, oh my God, that looks like a Roadster. Oh my God. So he said, lady, we're going to take you for a ride. Got into the rumble seat, and he took us around the block and to the restaurant itself. I am very content now to say, well, all my dreams and desires have been fulfilled. I have my wonderful family to thank for this, because they went to great lengths to bring this to fruition for me, that I'm still on a high. I don't have to fly out of a plane or anything like that. I just wanted to be on wheels in that little bucket. And there I am, in the little bucket seat. Dreams do come true.
Yes, they do. The holy grail of hockey, the Stanley Cup, was in the Windsor area this weekend. Bell River native Aaron Ekblad got to take it home after beating the Edmonton Oilers about a month ago. The cup was hugged, kissed, and even ate out of. The Florida Panther was videotaped eating pasta out of the cup, and not just any pasta. Local Italian eatery Spago's made the special dish for the NHLer. I don't know if it gets any more local than that. Well, maybe it's just me, but something in the air is making it feel like we're inching closer to the start of fall. Riley Lachuk is here with our weather forecast.
Well, thanks, Meg. I'm going to start with a look at some of our afternoon highs from this afternoon. A little bit below seasonal. Certainly did get into the 20s through southwestern Ontario, but the further north and the further east you went, certainly a lot cooler. Some of our temperatures here closer to home, 22 in Windsor this afternoon, barely hitting that 20 mark through Chatham, Kent, London into Sarnia. So, yeah, a little bit cool, and that's the pattern that we're moving into as we head into the next few days here, as we start to see our pattern shift more northerly and we get some of that cooler air from the north kind of sinking south. Through the afternoon hours, a bit of sun-cloud mix is what I'm calling it through the afternoon. Why we've seen some of those cooler temperatures, especially through Sarnia into the London, Chatham, Kent region, is because we've seen some of that offshore flow from the lakes and from those bodies of water through the afternoon. That's kind of been holding our temperatures back. That cloud all associated with this area of low pressure here. This is what brought all of that rain and some of that real crazy weather to parts of the GTA and to eastern Ontario throughout the weekend. This is sort of the backside, the remnants of that cloud cover. That does clear out as we get into the evening hours. So we are looking at a clear night tonight. Actually a pretty decent night to probably sleep with your windows open. I know that's sort of my thing through the summer if I can. Tomorrow morning, starting with this mix of sun and clouds, and that's kind of what we get as we get through the rest of the day on Tuesday. A much calmer pattern as we get through even into Wednesday. We're looking at mainly sunny skies, but the trade-off though is we are going to see temperatures that are a bit on the cooler side for this time of the year, where we should be around 25 degrees. We're going to struggle to get over 20 in some cases. What we will feel tomorrow especially is those north winds, 20 gusting to 40 to start the day, more like 15 gusting 30 as we get through into the afternoon hours. So a bit of a breeze throughout the afternoon hours through the day. Tomorrow, single digits overnight tonight. Chatham, Kent, London, 9 degrees. In Windsor, looking at 14 overnight and barely cracking 20 through the afternoon, looking at temperatures of 21 in Leamington, 20 in Chatham, Kent tomorrow, 20 in London. And really, we do start to rebound temperature-wise a bit as we get through Wednesday, Thursday. And Meg, back up to 28 degrees by the time we reach the weekend.
Well, thanks so much for that, Riley. CBC Windsor is doing a special project focusing on a specific postal code, N9C, otherwise known as Sandwich Town. It's a neighborhood in transition, home to bustling parks, close-knit communities, and as we know, a new international border crossing. Well, we're holding a listening session at Mackenzie Hall on Wednesday. CBC Windsor editorial assistant Justin Escateau has the details.
Justin, why did CBC Windsor pick this neighborhood for the community project?
Yeah, so Sandwich is an important part of Windsor. It's such a historic community, and the people here want to hear their issues and their stories talked about, especially, regarding construction and the good things that are happening here as well.
So I understand we're going to be doing something called a listening session. Can you explain to the viewers what that is?
Yeah, so a listening session is a form of journalism where reporters will directly hear from what the residents have to say about their community. It's important that we get this, that will inform our reporting and make it more accurate and hear what people have to say about their communities.
So I understand that you've kind of already been out in the community a little bit. What are people telling you about?
Yeah, this construction is the main thing. It's affecting a lot of local businesses and commuters, as well as housing, a lot of dilapidated housing and overcrowding within the communities. Accessibility to grocery stores is another one. It's a very far away to walk for people who don't have a car. And just more media representation in the area is something that Sandwich residents want to hear about.
Can you explain to the viewers what we will be doing with this information afterwards?
Yeah, so CBC Windsor is hoping to put a series of news stories out in the fall as a part of our Communities in Focus initiative, just talking about Sandwichtown and the things that they want to hear about. So all this information from our listening session will go towards that initiative.
Perfect. And we are excited to see you come out Wednesday.
See you then.
As mentioned, our Sandwichtown listening session happens this Wednesday, August 21st from 6 until 7:30 p.m. at Mackenzie Hall. Everyone with an N9C postal code is invited, and you can register by checking out the story on our website. We hope to see you there. I have to say, I missed that tower camera view while I was off downtown Windsor looking beautiful. We've got more news coming up after the break. price of polluting in Canada is a hot-button political issue. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has promised to rid consumers of the carbon tax if his party wins the next federal election. What's less clear is whether he plans to keep charging Canada's largest polluters. David Thurton now on the uncertainty it's creating for businesses.
If the industrial carbon price was eliminated, this carbon capture and storage facility could be at risk because there would be no profit from lowering emissions.
I think a price on carbon is an important part of that policy mix that helps to incentivize projects.
It's clear Pierre Poilievre wants to eliminate the consumer carbon tax and rebates.
Axe the tax! Axe the tax! Axe the tax!
Not so clear.
He will never tell us if he would keep the pollution pricing system for heavy industry.
Will he scrap the industrial carbon tax?
There is no industrial carbon tax on the oil and gas sector.
There is, though, a carbon price on industrial emissions.
If most people understand a carbon tax as carbon pricing, then it's true that there is a carbon price on industry.
Here's how it works. Most provinces and territories administer their own systems based on federal benchmarks on emissions and price. Firms that miss the benchmarks pay for credits. Firms that meet them can earn and sell credits for profit, like this American company wants to.
The reason we decided to go to Canada first is Canada has a price on carbon. So I can recover the higher cost of stripping out the CO2 with the price on carbon.
Dow Chemical is spending nearly $9 billion to decarbonize its Alberta plastics plant.
At the federal level, if they scratch, that price indication of the change, that is going to have a meaningful impact.
In other words, lose the price on carbon, risk losing the investment. For many, what's worrisome is the uncertainty.
Keep it or scrap it. The worst solution is stay undecided.
Industrial carbon pricing drives actually most of the technologies that they're working for.
Also, carbon pricing is by far the single most important climate policy, and if it remains, the Canadian Climate Institute says it could account for nearly 40% of Canada's greenhouse gas reductions in 2030. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Democratic National Convention is now underway in Chicago. It's a unique chapter in the party's history, with a sitting president choosing not to seek re-election and throwing his support behind his vice president, who is about to accept the nomination to replace him. As Paul Hunter reports, excitement for Kamala Harris has reached a fever pitch among Democratic delegates.
With the Democratic Party convention in Chicago barely even underway, the lengthy lineup here, anything and everything Kamala Harris.
We got this.
It's clear, no matter the feeling Democrats had under Joe Biden just a handful of weeks ago, the feeling now in that party is that Harris suddenly seems unstoppable.
It is exciting. It is exhilarating. People have a new surge of energy that they have now, because when she wins, we all win.
I haven't felt like this since I was a kid, when Obama first ran in 2008. And obviously, the magic of, the energy is just so powerful.
What a turnaround it's been as Democrats gather to formally nominate Harris on Thursday as their candidate for the White House. Surging in the polls, including in some of those key battleground states, the next level vibe is tempered only by the reminder the election is still more than 2 months away and much can change. Key to Harris and running mate Tim Walz is to maintain the enthusiasm through to November, to work to get the vote out.
We'll sleep when we're dead, when this is done, but not now. Not now.
Harris, Harris, you will see.
Indeed, there are hurdles ahead. Demonstrators outside the convention area reminding Harris they want action on the Israeli war in Gaza. A much smaller crowd underlining there remains an independent candidate who could siphon away votes. And then there's Donald Trump, who, despite the remarkable popularity of Harris, still has remarkably resilient popularity among Republicans. His backers, also in Chicago, on their views of a potential Harris presidency.
Socialism is death, destruction, shortages, and that's exactly what will happen if Harris gets elected.
Underlining a fierce, likely ugly battle remains, even if this week in Chicago, few here seem worried.
Everybody loves her. I mean, there's so much enthusiasm about Kamala, so I believe there's going to be a landslide. It's going to be a landslide.
Paul Hunter, CBC News, Chicago.
A game changer to the way we feed the planet. We tell you what's happening at a Saskatchewan farm. That's after the break. Legendary TV talk show host Phil Donahue has died. He's widely credited with revolutionizing daytime television.
Prejudiced whites do not want to recognize black.
The Phil Donahue Show countered the typical daytime programming of game shows and soap operas. It built a reputation as a forum for tough questions on hot-button topics such as equal rights for women and minorities. And he was the first to incorporate audience participation in a talk show. Donahue cleared a path for other daytime hosts who followed him, including Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and Montel Williams. Phil Donahue was 88 years old. The body of a Canadian has been recovered after a yacht sunk off the coast of Sicily. The yacht was chartered by British tech billionaire Mike Lynch. He is among 6 people still missing. 15 others have survived. The luxury yacht shown here before the sinking went down during a storm. Italian authorities say a tornado over the water struck overnight. The Port Authority says the Canadian who died was the ship's cook and had been living in Antigua. The first supermoon of the year, that also happens to be called a blue moon, is lighting up the skies tonight. Sydney, Australia was one of the first cities to catch a glimpse of the rare astronomical event. Patience paid off for those who waited despite an overcast sky. More cities witnessed the blue moon as the Earth turned. A supermoon is when the moon is at its closest point to us, making it appear larger than usual. The term blue moon doesn't mean the moon is blue, but rather indicates that it's the third full moon of 4 in a season. It will soon be our turn as the supermoon brightens the night skies over Canada. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.